Hey, Jules Blessed Vegan, and as always, welcome to my channel. And for those of you who are new, I know you can benefit. So, wow, I had a really close call with my food this morning, and I was trying to pinpoint what the triggers were, that made me so insane. I do not want to blame my little monkey mind coconut. What? Huh? Yeah, she's quiet now. But this morning, not so much. Oh my goodness. So what happened was I went ahead and helped made breakfast for my husband. I'll put it that way. So I made breakfast for my husband, and all of a sudden, my negotiation started. I usually intermittent fast because of my Invisalign, but if I'm home, I can technically take them out and brush and floss if I need to or whatever. And so it was only like 10:30 or 11, and I think this is my usual pattern. I get through the trauma clean, and when it ends, I want to drop all my boundaries and anesthetize myself with food. And so I had some traumas, right? I've been struggling with my sister Vanessa and her circumstance, a couple of my nieces and nephews who, 6 of them had COVID, but they're in varying degrees of it. And then, of course, my horse, Lola, and praise God, she's functioning, and she was up today and very close to who I know her to be. But, it was very traumatic because I honestly thought she was going to die. And so I'm kind of through all of that. And then, to be fair, I was still freaking out about my sister. Yes, I pray, but I still panic sometimes and try not to take my power back. But my sister, I knew she was being transferred to a new facility today, which will be a tremendous blessing. But I didn't expect her to call, and she seemingly called like 4 times in a row. And I was out caring for the horses and da-da-da. And by the time I got back to her, she was in transit already, and there was no way for me to get a hold of her. So that was kind of weighing on me. So there were little things like that. So anyway, with the idea of intermittent fasting, I was going to safely make my husband breakfast, which I often do, and get on with my day. And I had made another mistake. So one of my mistakes was that I had a lot of stress about things I could not control. Okay. Second mistake for me is I weighed myself, and I should weigh myself to be accountable, because I used to never weigh myself, and I would just, get bigger elastic waists in my pants, like seriously, and not have any accountability for that. And a lot of doctors won't even, you can decline on getting weighed at the hospital. So there's a lot of ways to play the game. But for accountability, I had agreed that I would weigh myself like the first of the month. Well, it's the 16th. So what was that about, right? So that kind of threw me into a tizzy, and it was super unnecessary. So that was another trigger for me. And then another trigger was that I was not in the present moment. So I was accidentally allowing myself to look ahead and into a future that doesn't even exist yet, and getting all stressed out about things that may or may not come to pass. And so between all of that, I started negotiating, and that's where Monkey was coming in going, hoo, 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 yeah, let's do it. Hoo, 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 yay. She's finally paying attention to me. Hoo, hoo. And I was like, can anyone else hear that? So while I was making my husband his meal, which was semi-vegan, but definitely had some animal byproduct, let's just say, I started justifying. Well, I've been clean the whole month, and it won't matter anyway, and I can have half of this, and then he's going to have, the dead animal product, and I can have this, which of course is still technically vegan. I mean, it's not raw or anything, but it is vegan, and I know it's kind of processed, but there's no animal products in it. And then all of a sudden I'm saying to my husband, what would you like on the side? Because I'm going to have half. And he's like, oh, wow, really? Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, make me this and this instead. And luckily, the momentum of a stronger self didn't decline, but kept asking, why? Why? And so I was actually processing throughout the time that I was preparing to binge. And I was just like, all the things, all those triggers, the things that trigger me. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Where in the 12-step program it says to halt. Was I hungry? Only mentally and emotionally. Was I angry? No. Was I lonely? A little, because I was wishing I could be with my sister Vanessa to support her in that transition. I wished I could be with my nieces and nephews and care for them. Was I tired? Absolutely. I had a huge week and I usually crash on Saturday. So there was some of that going on for sure. And then again, I had no business weighing myself. I wasn't happy with the numbers, even though my rings are loose, even though my pants fit incredibly. I accidentally focused on that number instead, which was just not good. And then again, I was suddenly looking at a future that doesn't exist and stressing out about what may never be. So those are definitely 3 triggers for me. Luckily, even though I portioned them all up for myself and put all my husband's meal together, at the last second, I was able to redish mine out. And even though I hadn't planned on eating at that time, I was like, maybe you are genuinely hungry. Go ahead and have your first meal. So by God's grace, I was able to have celery and pink grapefruit with some chia. And I sat there eating that. And my husband was like, okay, what was all that? What just went on? And I'm like, let it go, let it go. So praise God, I did make it. And I will be giving myself many urges right there. Putting more into my urge jar because wow. And I was just really grateful, that my stronger self, no offense to the monkey mind, was able to say, how is that going to serve you? How is that going to serve you? How in the world are you going to get to any goal that you keep proclaiming that you have? And it was really interesting because I was just thinking, it's not that we may not get COVID, but our best chance of fighting it is going to be a healthy immune system. And I just have no business making my body have to fight through processed food, And then the other thing that freaked me out was that I just didn't have any greens, per se, in the house. I did have one portion that I had set aside for dinner. And I didn't want to use that because, of course, I knew I'd need it for dinner. But I literally was thinking, how am I going to feel when I've had this junk and my body's trying to process the junk? Like, inevitably, I won't even want what I had planned for dinner, And so I did make that mistake. I ran out of greens. I didn't have any power greens left. To be fair, though, I did have some frozen spinach, which I could use. And I had some frozen broccoli sprouts, which I could use. And I ultimately did in my day, and I will certainly go get greens tomorrow. But I had actually just finished my microgreens, and I have fresh microgreens going. I have fresh sprouts growing. But they take, 4, 6, 8 days, depending on what it is. And so whenever I don't have my basics, I panic. And that is usually when I fall off my plan. So it was a series of things that triggered me. And luckily, as I suggested, I did not act on it. So I was able to get my day 16 sticker. And I absolutely just gave myself some beautiful beads to appease my inner child. I wrote in my journal, and at least I took some time to actually see what the chaos was, and the chaos, honestly, it was a sense of an inability to control anything. Like, that's what it comes down to. I couldn't control the health of my sister or my nieces and nephews. I couldn't control some of the things that are going on with people in my life that need support. And even though I certainly pray for all of it, and I really do trust that God is on the case, sometimes I take that back and decide there's some way that I can fix it, and I couldn't. So what I've always done is thought I could control my food, right? My food doesn't talk back. My food's always there when I need it. My food's my best friend. My food doesn't judge. Like that whole thing, all those old behaviors. And luckily, as I was eating my pink grapefruit and my tired celery, it was a little tired, I have to admit, I kept reminding myself that I want to say eating to thrive rather than living to eat. I kept saying, you are eating for necessity, not for abuse of power and corruption. No, I'm not talking Washington. I'm talking about my body. People, you have no idea how hard it is for me not to talk politics right now. Oh my gosh. And then there's some people in here who, of course, slammed me and said that they're praying for me, that God will remove the film over my eyes. All right, my friends. Thank you for being here and checking in. Can you relate at all to some of those triggers? Definitely getting on that scale, not having your proper food available for you, overthinking about things you cannot control. Any of that? I'd love to know. All right, like if you like, join us if you haven't subscribed. Let me know in the comments below how I may support you. And until we talk again, know that I'm praying. And best of all, know that you are blessed.